Hey everyone, well I'm going to do a little bit of a different type of video than I normally do, so kind of bear with me. Now we're going to go ahead and just jump right into a particular verse passage and just kind of follow with me as best you can. Alright, so Galatians 5 verses 13 through 15. For you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Remember that word, that's an important word. Only do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, your body and carnal things, but through love serve one another. For all the law, God's word, is fulfilled in one word, even in this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another. Now what this is all saying is that basically the word liberty, that is a word in America we hear sometimes, but I mean basically, do we even use that word anymore? Liberty? I mean, the Statue of Liberty, is that what I'm talking about? No, I'm not talking about that. I mean, liberty, if you don't know, essentially means freedom from control, interference, obligation, restrictions, hampering conditions. Essentially, it's choice. Liberty is freedom. And God has given us freedom of choice to do whatever we choose. And in this passage here, it's saying that you have been called to be free. But don't use that freedom to do things that hurt other people. Don't abuse your freedom. Because if you do, which it says in verse 15, if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another. So if you start basically abusing or attacking those around you, be careful, because then they might start attacking you, and basically you end up with this big situation of like how the world is right now, especially in America, where like everyone is at everybody's throats constantly. Now, I can't be the only person that is driving crazy, that everyone is divided. Everyone has somebody else they just can't stand, they don't ever want to do anything with. And it's not just one person, it's groups of people. I mean, just look at the Christians in churches. How many you got Lutherans who say bad things about Baptists, who say bad things about Catholics, who say bad things about all these other groups. You got just Christians themselves are fractured and divided and splintered against one another. Now, we have the freedom to do that, but then there's a penalty for it. There's a price. Now, it seems to me that just a lot of people right now have no personal accountability. It's somebody else's fault I act the way I act. It seems to be the new trend. Or it's in my culture, I'm raised a certain way where, bad things that what you consider bad are okay. Because I live in a culture where, even in America, where racial things are okay, yet, you live in the big America, so racial things are bad. No, you're not allowed to do that. I'm allowed, but you're not. And it just seems that we're just having this constant double or even sometimes triple standard, and just these ridiculous hypocrites who are out there always saying to everybody else, I can do this, but you can't. Or why are you doing it? Because you said you would. It's just, and then they try to get out of it, and there's no personal accountability anymore. However, the Bible says, and this is good because I wanted to make sure I found this verse, in Romans 14:12, it says, so then each of us shall give account of himself to God. And it's important that it says himself and each of us. It's not saying we all will or anything that makes it sound like it's going to be a group of people. This is an individual thing that each of us, when it comes down to it, will have to give an account of what we have done to God, and actually even take it a step further from just actions. If you look at Matthew 12:36, and this is Jesus talking, and he says, but I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give account of it in the day of judgment. So it's not only what you do, it's what you say. Everything you do and say will be held accountable. And that sounds like a big thing. That's a big order to fill. I mean, because now it's like, whoa, Rick, you're saying some big stuff. Now not only am I held accountable for things I do, I'm also held accountable for things I say. Yeah. It's a big deal to be just loose and use and abuse our freedom to just do whatever we want. Now, just for a couple other famous quotes from people that have been in the U.S., if this thing is going to work, it's not wanting to at the moment. Well, for one, Ronald Reagan said, as government expands, liberty contracts. What does that mean? Real quick, I mean, it's saying that if the government grows, as it grows, liberty, which we know now is freedom of choice, freedom of actions, or whatever, contracts. It disappears. It starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Thomas Jefferson said, "My reading of history convinces me that most bad government results from too much government. The bigger that the government gets, the less freedom people have, and then the bigger that the government gets," Thomas Jefferson is saying, if you look through history, at least what he's seen through history, those governments start to become bad. They start, I mean, everyone knows that absolute power corrupts absolutely. So why is it a big surprise that if we keep making our government bigger and give it more things that it has power over us, that eventually, if it isn't already, and that's up to personal opinion, where it is now, that it'll end up being so big, so powerful, so possibilities for control and laws and all this other stuff, that it's going to end up becoming evil. You know?
Objective almost complete. Don't quit now.
The only way that we can, that the government itself isn't necessarily as required on a large scale, is when the people themselves control themselves, when they hold themselves accountable, when they govern themselves, when they say, I'd really like to go and steal that thing from my friend, but then they're like, no, that's wrong. I'm not going to do it. We don't need as many laws for all this stuff that's going on lately if people would just hold themselves accountable and would do the right thing on their own. I mean, that's how it used to be. That was one of the things that made America so amazing. So I've heard. I've never gotten to really see it myself. But in the past, that people would, they would try to live right as best they could. Obviously, nobody's perfect. But I mean, you know, people tried. Nowadays, people don't even try. And actually, if you try, you're really weird. And I know that from personal experience, because when I'm out in the world, I don't even try. And I'm not bragging or nothing. I don't even try. But people, I have been pegged as a Christian so many times in my life. And it used to really bug me as a kid, because I'm like, I'm not even doing anything. How do these people already automatically know that I'm a Christian? And I guess it sort of to a degree bothered me, because I felt that maybe I wasn't as accepted, because they would just like say it, you know, like, oh, I bet you're a Christian, aren't you? And it's like, I didn't even sometimes say anything. And maybe it was because I didn't say certain things. I didn't participate, or I didn't act a certain way. And again, not to be bragging or anything, but, you know, it's just that, I mean, for myself, I can't hold anybody responsible for my actions. If somebody puts me in a bad mood, and that's my fault, you know, and I start yelling and screaming at other people, even people who aren't even connected to that situation, whose fault is that? Is it their fault for being there when I was going to vent? No, it's not their fault. That's my fault for not being able to control myself, be able to control my emotions and my words. That's myself. That's me. No one else is responsible for my actions. I am. Sure, certain people may have helped put me in a certain mood, but that's my responsibility to react negatively or positively to what they say. That's my responsibility. I'm the one who's accountable for how I react. I'm the one who's accountable for how I treat and talk and act around other people. Nobody else is responsible for that. We absolutely have to hold ourselves accountable. Now, there's a really awesome verse in 1 Corinthians 13:11. It says, "When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things." Now, obviously, if you're a girl or a young woman or something, you know, read this in context that it works the same. You know, it's across the board. When we were children, we acted like children. We did things like children. But if we want to be adults, we have to put that stuff away. And that doesn't just happen, boys and girls, as soon as you turn 18. How many 18 or 20-something-year-olds do you know who absolutely act like 14-year-olds? Who treat their parents badly? Who show up late to work? Who don't pay their bills on time? Who, you know, just do whatever they feel like doing whenever they want. They're not acting like adults. How many people do you know? I know a couple. And it pains me to see them like that, because, you know, and it's not to judge them, but it's like you can see how that affects them. You can see how their relationships are. You can see how their promotions at their jobs are going. You can see how their lives are unfolding, what kind of choices they make. And you can see that it's not generally positive. And when I say being an adult, I don't mean you can't play video games or you can't go to movies and see cool stuff or, you know, laugh at fart jokes anymore. I'm just saying that there has to be an internal choice that I'm not going to act like I was when I was a teenager. I'm not going to act like I did in elementary school. I'm going to personally choose to be an adult and to be mature and to be responsible. Regardless of your age, you can already start making that choice. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It will take some time. It will take some progress. It will take you making a couple of mistakes, a couple of things where you're like, man, that was kind of a childish move. And I've done that even recently. I've done stuff that I'm like, man, that was kind of stupid. That was something that I would expect from teenager Rick, not from adult 25-year-old Rick. But that's what happens, and it has to be a choice.
Hardpoint is ours.
It basically comes down to, if we aren't going to govern ourselves better, if we, the people of America, are not going to desire to hold our own selves responsible for what we do, what we say, anything, then we might as well just hand over the rest of the limited amount of liberty we have left. Because that's what keeps happening. The more laws that get passed, taking away our own ability to govern ourselves, we're just giving them that much more power. And this isn't to just speak out against governments. You need governments to help protect its citizens and to put laws in place that actually do help the people. I'm not against laws. I'm against, though, giving too much power to men and women, putting them in a position where they could easily abuse things, whether knowingly or unknowingly. With that, guys, let me know down what you think in the comment section. Do you think that, as a whole, America, or whatever country you live in, are people responsible for their actions? Or are they those people who are like, it's not my fault that I, as like the thing going on right now with like the bullies. The bullies right now in school are victims. They're the one who was hurt by somebody else, and that's why they act out. They're not necessarily held responsible for still beating up and harassing other kids, but, it's the other kids' kind of fault for, I don't know, kind of like being there and being in the way. And, the bully themselves is a victim. No doubt they're a victim. No doubt something horrible happened, and it may have helped kind of like turn them that way. But it's still that person's responsibility to own up to that. And an adult should be there to tell them, hey, this is wrong. Just because something happened to you, yes, that's horrible. Let's deal with that. But you can't use that as an excuse. People just love lately just using as an excuse that it was somebody else's fault for why they are the way they are, why they act the way they act, why they're in a bad mood. When it's our responsibility, it's our liberty, it's our freedom of choice. And that was given to us by God. So anyway, let me know down in the comment section what you guys think. And, yeah, we'll kind of discuss this. All right? Take care, everybody. Bye.